So today is January 6th, 2016. Dr. Edward Miner joins Kay Wagner and Sarah Battison to talk about his years at Gunderson. Dr. Miner joined Gunderson Clinic as an internist in 1964
Yes.
and retired in 2000. Dr. Miner, please tell us how you decided to become a physician and how that led you to join Gunderson eventually.
Well, I was an only child. My folks didn't go beyond 8th grade, but fortunately for me, they were dedicated to education and able to provide some support. I had a friend a year older than I was. We were close friends in Boy Scouts and high school sports. And he started in pre-med and encouraged me to do the same because he was pretty sure that that wouldn't cause me to waste much time academically, because the course that I would take would probably be what I would take if I were going into some other scientific field too. So I started in pre-med and nothing ever got in the way. So I went to Marquette University for my first 2 years of undergrad. Excuse me. And then things were going pretty well, and I realized it would be much less expensive to continue at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So I transferred for my third year of pre-med and did medical school there. And that was the start of it all.
And where did you train?
I did a rotating internship, 3 years of internal medicine residency, the third of which was chief resident, and a year of research in endocrinology and metabolism, all at the Indiana University Medical Center in Indianapolis. And all that was from 1957 through 1962.
And how did you hear about or come to practice at Gunderson?
Well, I've been aware of Gunderson all my life. We had relatives in La Crosse that we would visit, actually quite frequently, and so the name was there. And then I guess nobody in my family had any medical problems that got them here until I was into the business myself and well aware of the clinic.
What was your number again? Was it, did you say 40?
My billing number was 042.
042.
I believe that I was number 39 as far as bodies were concerned when I joined.
And you knew about Gunderson, but was there a particular reason that practicing here was attractive to you?
I couldn't find anything better once I became acquainted with the practical realities of practice, geography, access, all that. It was pretty obvious that this was a pretty good place, and I literally did judge my adventures into other possibilities by how it compared to here, and I wasn't able to find anything that appealed to me anymore.
Did you know anyone that was practicing here?
No.
How about a mentor or someone in your life that influenced you?
Well, I didn't have much influence along the medical line because I had 2 doctor's visits until I was 17 years old. I had a high school physical for sports, and I stepped on a nail at the beginning of a Boy Scout hike, and so I had to have that looked at by the local physician at home in Pippin. And those were my 2 encounters with medicine until I was ready to go to college. You asked about role models. That started to become important probably in college or early medical school, and then there were many, and I felt very good about the people that I could model after, and their support and their conduct, and I thought they were pretty smart.
Anyone in particular?
Not that would stand out over and above quite a number of faculty. Of course, as you move along, you get better and better acquainted with the people. You see them at a different level. So it would have to be in Indiana, where as an intern I thought I would be drafted as soon as that year was over, and that didn't happen. And the program was on a rapidly upward movement with a new chairperson in the form of John Hickam. And I was fortunate to get a position there and to be allowed, as far as the Army was concerned, to stay there until I was finished. And then they seemed to be a little less interested in me, and so I ended up getting the position at the NIH in Bethesda with the Public Health Service Hospital there. So that supplier took care of my military obligation. The Public Health Service meets military obligation for you in peacetime, but not in wartime. If the country's at war, the Public Health Service doesn't count as military service. And that 2-year span was particularly interesting because everybody who is anybody who gets to the NIH periodically, and they all like to give a talk when they're there. So if you're there in a role, in a job that's not too awfully busy, you can soak up a lot of good people and their presentations at a place like that. And then the second year I was there, I had time to study for and take my boards, and that worked out very well too.
You indicated that you were number 042 and the 39th, maybe the 39th physician on staff. That was relatively early in the growth of Gunderson as we look at it today. Was being one of the early non-Gundersons on staff ever challenging?
I don't think I ever felt anything like that. However, when I joined the internal medicine department, Robert Ramlow, Robert Rasmus, Ed Perry, Sig Sievertson, and Al Braley were already here. And Robert Green and Bill Morgan joined essentially the same couple weeks that I did. So there was a contingent ahead of me that just, as I say, I never thought of the non-Gunderson group. And as I've commented, I think, a number of times, the family was such a strong aspect of this, but they were strong in terms of brains and energy. I always felt that they were either as smart or smarter than most of the rest of us, and willing to work as hard or harder than most of the rest of us. And that solved a lot of problems that might have otherwise been around.
Well, medicine, particularly endocrinology, has evolved considerably since during your practice. Can you give us some insight into innovations that you've witnessed in the field throughout your career?
I think in my contacts with endocrine problems, the big thing was the ability to actually measure the hormones in the blood, to actually do the assays. When I first, medical school times and shortly after, we had a lot of very complicated indirect tests to try to sort out what was going on. collecting urines and measuring this and that, until finally the folks who were able to come up with the scientific ability to measure the hormones themselves. So that sort of moved it into a whole other field of being certain as to what you're dealing with, I guess.
I know you were very involved over the years with work with the aging, and were known for special care, long-term patient care. You were honored for caring for the aged. Did that become an area of specialization for you? I know you had the endocrinology fellowship, but in your work within the internal medicine department, was that an area of specialization for you?
You hope they live long enough so they become a specialty. I think it was, well, I don't know how to respond to that, really.
Well, geriatrics was really not a recognized field.
Yeah, and I didn't have any special training, but I think all of internal medicine, all of general internal medicine is going to sort of settle out there, because hopefully young people, if they get sick, they get well. And but as people get older and they get sick, they aren't quite as often get well. And we had more and more to offer, and so people lived longer. But many of them, because of some relatively complicated programs, and so they required more visits. And when you have an established practice that's getting older, you tend to see each individual a little more often, and so it gets to be a dominant part of your practice, and that was fine with me.
Well, I know you served on Gunderson Medical Foundation for 21 years as a member of the Board of Trustees, Secretary-Treasurer for 16 years, if the notes are correct,
Yes.
And on various committees. Why do you consider the foundation important to Gunderson?
Well, to begin with, it held the property. It's where we were, and it turned the organization into one where everybody felt like they had a piece of it, and the fact that you could vote after a short period of time and become involved from the beginning, and you didn't have to buy in or buy out, and this was such a tremendous difference in recruiting, because you could recruit people for what they knew and what they could do, not by what they already had in their pocket or what their rich uncle would help them out with. So the foundation therefore provided a conduit for support for medical education and an increasing amount of research. I'm happy to say that I was the first non-family contributor to Gunderson Foundation.
Now, you were involved in forming the investment committee?
No, not forming it, but
You were an early member of the investment committee?
Yeah, and then I stayed on it after after retirement for some number of years.
In talking with David Amborn, he spoke to the fact that you were very helpful with getting endowment funds and understanding the need for the endowment funds that are the basis of the foundation. Do you have any comments on that aspect of the foundation?
Well, the need for them, obvious, but I guess I made a few contacts that turned out to be helpful in that regard, and I'm sure everybody has their chance, and sometimes that's successful.
I know he expressed his appreciation for your work on making certain that the endowments were properly raising money and earning money and then spending appropriate amounts. So I just give you that compliment from David Amborn.
Thank you.
You were involved in teaching while you were here. Can you talk about that?
Well, the so-called teaching service began just about the time that I came. There had been an internship here, and I think even a one-year surgical program, or one-year period of training. But at about the time that Dr. Overholt arrived on the scene, and with the background of running an internal medicine program, and then the surgery program got started at the full level of training and just took off. So I enjoyed being part of the group of internists who did attend the hospital services and supervise the interns and residents. And that service grew from the point of not always having a service to full-time. And then I think by the time I stopped doing that, we probably had 4 full-time hospital services that were busy. Then things changed quite a bit, but that was about the time I retired, so I haven't been able to keep up with it.
Did you have a role in bringing UW-Madison students to train or during med school?
I didn't have any role in getting them here, but I had a role in dealing with them when they got here. So, and this was mostly the primary care rotation that was provided to, they probably were surgery students, yeah, I think. The 4th-year medical students would come here in certain specialty rotations, but the 3rd-year people would come for a month of primary care, and that might be internal medicine or it might be pediatrics, depending on what they chose. But that was a good opportunity because those people were young, and there was still a lot of I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed at that point.
What do you see as the value of the medical education program institutionally to not only staff, but probably regionally and?
Well, there's no better teacher than yourself when you have to teach. You learn a lot by preparing. You learn a lot by the feedback that you get. You learn a lot by being aware that people are paying a lot of attention to what you're doing, and that's important to be enjoyed, you might say, and the residents are a great help to maintaining the level of academic performance. And as you can see, the internal medicine program does very well when it comes to taking their boards and performing along those lines.
And I would think that it also is a good recruitment tool as well as I don't know what the percentage is, but many of the interns and residents practice here.
They stay, yeah. And of course, it's a nice opportunity to have that length of time to look at somebody. I mean, you know what you got by the time they've been around for 3 years.
what would your colleagues say that you were known for?
I struggled with that a little bit, but I thought maybe the answer would be that he's known for knowing who's connected to who and why. Um, the interconnection of people has always been sort of fascinating for me, and I think part of it, growing up in a small town, and then my father had been postmaster for 14 years. My mother was related to a lot of the Scandinavians in the countryside, and I worked in a grocery store where we waited on people, and I ended up with the attitude of, well, doesn't everybody know everybody? And that carried along, and you kind of pay attention to who's related to who and why. And I guess I did get somewhat of a reputation for that. They said I took the old Dr. Carlson's place.
Do you have any fond memories of your practice at Gunderson that you'd like to share with us?
Well, of course, in 35 years of successful practice, you either have a lot of fond memories or you should have gotten out a long time ago. And it was hard to pull out anything very specific, but a couple of things did come to mind when I was thinking about this. A nurse in the intensive care unit jumping up onto a patient's bed and whopping him on the chest before he knew what was going on. And he sure wondered what was going on just before he passed out from his ventricular tachycardia that he had developed. She diagnosed what was on the screen. She took the right action, except he hadn't quite passed out yet. So, and he survived. He got out of survived his coronary, went back to work. The privilege of becoming well acquainted with some really neat people. Ray Bice, Fred Kramer, and Martha Hayden. Martha Hayden lived to be 106. And if she needed to be seen in the emergency room, she had to get her makeup on before she left the nursing home, or she wasn't going to go. That sort of person. And in spite of the 106, she kept track of a lot of details, including my social life, which was pretty funny. The likes of Mr. Bice and Mr. Kramer were more the life story of interesting folks who contributed quite a bit along the way. Both of those gentlemen lived to be well into their 90s, and they were active community people. Mr. Bice, having been in the state legislature for quite a long time, at home he was a house builder, and he would write historic, political type editorial things for the paper, and I'm sure they didn't have to correct much. One day he was in my office at, as I say, well into his 90s, saying, "Dr. Miner, you know, I get kind of tired once in a while." I said, "Ray, do you take a nap?" He backed up. "Why, heavens no." He said, "My time is precious." That sort of thing. And Mr. Kramer was a fellow who went from a streetcar conductor to chairman of the board of the First Federal Savings and Loan. So just to occasionally have some few free minutes to let these people talk was a pleasure.
Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for someone considering entering the field of medicine at this time?
Well, I think it's a privilege to be able to know as much as we can know about something as complicated as a human being. And we have gained phenomenal bits of information. I thought we were in pretty good shape when I was in medical school. The Pope almost died of his hiccups, and he was cured with Thorazine, which had just emerged on the scene. Things just got better and better, and with the ability to visualize coronary arteries, to do what we do for cataract surgery these days. The opportunity to just be a part of all that is tremendous and should be appreciated enough to get you past some of the not so exciting parts of the practice with the management and computerization and need to meet different challenges like that. But if you're interested in the science and the opportunity to serve and help people, it's still a good thing to strive for if you can do it.
Are there other things that you'd like to share?
One of the downers, one of the bad days was when our second successful dialysis patient, who had gone on to transplant, rehab, back doing his thing when he committed suicide. We felt that he had really stabbed us. I had the privilege of starting the dialysis unit with Dr. Green, and I got it going. This fellow was our second patient. But our first patient went on to getting a transplant from his sister and lived, I think, 35 years with his inherited kidney, which that was the big positive of that whole experience. Of course, the dialysis business went from some very crude equipment to a stack of little machines that look like a hi-fi set now, and go along with each station. Dr. Utuck was actually in Seattle getting his specialty training from the horse's mouth in the form of Belding Scribner when all this got started, so we sort of got things started and ready. And then when he finished his training program out there, he had just become a citizen, having been growing up in the Philippines. And so then he got drafted for 2 years. So then some other folks got involved. But then when Dr. Utuck came back, he pretty much took over the direction of all that, with the help of Drs. Newcomer and Dahlberg.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a tremendous experience, having been a part of that scene.
Anything else?
I don't think so. It was a good ride.
Well, we certainly thank you for coming in today. It's been a pleasure to visit with you and hear about your story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all the years.
Yes.
Yeah.